could you tell me what's the qualifications that I must have to be a politician? When I grow up, I want to become a famous man, like Mr. Blair or Bill Clinton. I know to be a doctor, you need a degree. I know a common soldier must be tall with a strong body. To become a scientist, you need maths smartness. Well, what must I study, Daddy, to get into politics? Son, can you be a member of one party and your heart in the next one you see? Can you be one party's party whip and find the next for leadership? You must swear on Bible and take false oath. You must use big words to get vote. You must lie and watch me straight in the eye. Oh son, that's the qualifications of a politician. You must lie and watch me straight in the eye. My son, that's the qualifications of a politician. Son, a politician is a special breed of man with a special personality. He will promise you paradise and the promised land, and after elections he knows nobody. He'll give his party members car, house and big loan. Though they have no papers, he will spread pets in a wrong hole. He's one who shows no pity for vagrants and for humans. If you can behave like that, my son, you're on your way to the one. Son, can you see the crime rate escalating? Walk about and yet do nothing. Can you see two persons in one hospital and them say nothing at all? You must speak the Queen's English in Parliament and curse obscene when you reach the pavement. You must fool yourself and fool people in the long run. My son, that's the qualifications of a politician. You must thief and jail a man if he touch a leaf. Oh son, that's the qualifications of a politician.
Good evening and welcome to Politics 101 on a Wednesday evening. Welcome to Politics 101. The qualifications of a politician. The qualifications of a politician. You must fool yourself and fool other people. That's the qualifications of a politician. Good evening, wherever you're joining us from. Welcome to Politics 101. Wednesday evening, as we say. And we have lots to talk about tonight, wherever you're joining us from. You're joining us from Guyana, in Guyana. Welcome. Welcome to Politics 101. If you're joining us from the wider Caribbean, welcome. Welcome to Politics 101. If you join us from North America, whether it's in Mexico, some of our people are there, studying. I know a couple of people are studying in Mexico, or you're in the United States or Canada. But yes, Mexico is North America, geographically speaking. Politically, it's Central America, Latin America, but geographically, it's North America, like our Guyana. Geographically, we are South American, but politically and culturally, we are Caribbean. Mexico is part of North America. It used to be a trick question when I was a schoolboy. How many countries in North America? And we would say two. The teacher, I remember Mr. Hines, Henry Hines from BV. He's in St. Lucia now, I think, or he may be back in Ghana. Last time I checked, he was teaching at UG. Quite a teacher, very excellent teacher. And it's good to see him still teaching teachers at UG when I last checked. He would ask, he taught us geography at Buxton Secondary School. How many countries in North America? 2. No, oh, Lord of mercy. Always, I never forget that. Mexico. He said, Mexico is North America. All of you who are in North America, the United States of America, Canada, welcome to Politics 101. Those of you who are joining us from across the border in Guyana, in Suriname, French Guyana, some of you hanging out in Brazil and Venezuela. Welcome to Politics 101. Good evening to those of you who join us from further afield in Europe, particularly in the United Kingdom or Great Britain, or England. I know a couple of people are in Ireland, and some of you in France, joining us from France. Good night in that part of the world. Welcome to Politics 101. Shout out to all of you wonderful people. What are the qualifications of a politician? You got to trick people and trick yourself, and you're on your way to becoming a politician. You scamp man. Welcome. Good evening to all of you who are joining us from down there in the southern part of the United States of America. 2 hurricanes, whap. Florida got hit both times, but people as far up as in Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and people are still mopping up after those 2 hurricanes. Thank God in Guyana, we do not have to deal with that affliction, but of course we have to deal with other things such as flooding and that stuff. We're below sea level, so we have our own problems there. And with global warming, everything. I understand it's very, very hot in Guyana, extremely hotter than normal. Global warming. Good evening to those of you who are in Georgia, in South Carolina. How are you doing, Jose? Out there in South Carolina, and all you wonderful people in Georgia, in particular Atlanta, the Robertsons, and all the rest of you down there. Some of you are in Florida. How about those of you in Washington, D.C., Maryland, Virginia area? Welcome to Politics 101. As I said, we have lots to talk about tonight. And we are going to be joined by Mr. Wayne Caesar, who is the host of Over to You on Saturday nights. And he is going to be here. In fact, he's mic'd up and ready backstage to go. And we are going to roll shortly. Well, you know, we just listened to Chalk Dust, the qualifications of a politician, and oh boy, you know, we have a driver. Chalk Dust had done a calypso years ago called "The Driver Cannot Drive." The driver cannot drive. The driver cannot drive. We have a driver who can't drive. Yeah, he got a big maxi taxi with 33 passengers, and the driver cannot drive. We come on here tonight, and the president last week, he announced the cash transfer of $200,000, which is a WPA idea. And then he said he will distribute it to each household, which is also the WPA methodology. And then today, this afternoon, as I was coming on here, I saw it's all over the place. The president changed his mind. He's not going to use the methodology of households anymore. So instead of $200,000 per household, he's now giving $100,000 per individual. Now, that methodology was suggested by Winston Jordan, former finance minister. Of course, he gave no credit to Winston Jordan. And so now it's $100,000 per individual to each Guyanese citizen once you have a passport and you have a driver's license and you're 18 years by January 1st. So I understand the president said he listened to representation by especially young people who had some problems with who have some problems with the methodology of the household, since the president did not define what he meant by household. Nobody knew what he meant by household, and the classical definition of household would have left some people out, and so here is the problem. Being the WPA said, we prefer the household methodology, but we ask for a feasibility study. You see, when you thief people things and you're just using it, as old people say, you know nothing about nothing. And so you didn't do any feasibility study to figure out what is the best methodology. So you thief from the WPA, their methodology, then you change your mind, now you thief in Winston Jordan methodology because you did not do a feasibility study. And that is why we in the WPA said, while we have our preferences, we feel that in the end, this thing must be informed by a feasibility study. We know the PPP don't like feasibility studies for obvious reasons. So here they are. Last week, they come out with one thing, and this week they come out with another thing. Look, somebody sent me a text They say if you're born the 2nd of January 2007, you become 18 the day after the cutoff date. Cactus and Pepper war in Korea with such people. Such people will feel that they are cheated. This morning on Kadaki's program, I floated the idea of perhaps a hybrid system of using household and individual in order to plug these holes. Because if you born the 2nd of January 2007, you're not going to be 18 until the day afterwards. So you out. If you're a young family, you're a young mother and father with your children, young children, you're in your 20s or 30s and you don't have adult children, you have young children. If they had used the household story, you would have gotten $200,000. They're now using the individual thing. You will get 200,000. Mama will get 100. Daddy will get 100. So you are right. You're losing both ways. But if you're a young mother with your young children, with the household, you'd have gotten 200,000. With the individual, now you're getting 100,000. So you see, you can't, unless you do a feasibility study, you can't plug every hole. So there are some people who are now going to complain, because I bet you a lot of the people who were saying that they want the individual thing, they wanted $200,000 individual. And these things, you have to do feasibility studies in order to determine what is the best methodology. So either way, you're going to have problems. A household in Guyana is 3.6 persons. That's the equivalent of a household, according to the data of 2021. And if you look at the projected population in 2021, it was just over 800,000. That would have given us about 220 something, 224, 225 households. And that's what we in the WPA were working with. Jack Dio came up with $60 billion, 200,000 per household, which means he was working with 300,000 households. Where did he get the extra 75 households from? Nobody knew. We don't have the census, the new census, so we don't know how many people. But I was curious that he says each citizen of Guyana, I think that's what I saw. Each citizen of Guyana, once you have a Guyanese passport or an ID, you draw down the 100,000. So somebody like myself who lives a couple of months in Guyana, part in Guyana, part outside of Guyana, and I was saying that, look, I don't qualify. I now qualify. I get $100,000 because I have a Guyanese passport and I have a Guyanese driver's license and I have a Guyanese ID. If the $60 billion, 100,000 per person, it means that you're catering for 600,000 adults. We don't know if we have 600,000 adults or more. We don't know. But what we know, if you're saying, and this we are saying, if you're saying that each Guyanese citizen with a passport or a driver's license, ID card, is going to get this thing, just as how you had Guyanese who voted at the last election, even though they were not in Guyana, but they are on the voters list. They're on the voters list. So if all them Guyanese happen to be home, They don't necessarily live there, but they go home for a little holiday and they got a green card. So they still get a Guyanese passport. Bingo, they get a thing. We will see. The point is that there is no satisfactory methodology, or no methodology is going to satisfy everybody. And that is why you wanted to do a feasibility study and to look for the most democratic way. We shall see. We shall see. But again, what it shows is when you do a scarum story without any serious plan, this is where you end up. You end up in Budo Book. And that is what has happened to the government. Good evening and welcome to Politics 101. With the news that the government has changed its mind. It is no longer giving $200,000 per household. It's giving $100,000 to each individual 18 years and over. And you have to be 18 years by January 1st, 2025. If you're born January 2nd and you become 18 on January 2nd, out goes you. You get nothing. Good evening, welcome. I think we are ready to roll. We're ready to roll with our conversation. Let's bring in our guest, Mr. Wayne Caesar. Brother Wayne, good evening.
A pleasant good evening to you, Dr. Hines, and all the freedom fighters present here tonight. Good evening, good evening, good evening. I am well. How are you?
I am surviving by Almighty God's grace. And how is the show going? Saturday night on at 7 o'clock. Over to you. Yes.
The show is going very, very well. You know, thanks to the listeners and viewers. As I always say, Over to You is a program for the people, by the people. It's the people's program. I represent the people of Guyana.
Representing the people of Guyana. The big news, Brother Wayne, of course, is the president's announcement. Last Thursday in the National Assembly of a menu of initiatives aimed at, as he said, putting more money in people's hands. And the headline initiatives were the cash transfer of $200,000, which for each household, which is now adjusted today to $100,000 per individual. And the second initiative was free education at the University of Guyana. And third, the upping of the minimum wage to no less than $100,000. All are opposition initiatives. Cash transfer, WPA, free education, PNC. All the opposition parties have agreed that you should raise the minimum wage. What was your initial response when you heard these initiatives by the president?
Well, Dr. Hines, let me first start off by, acknowledging, and I'm going to say this. Dr. Clive Thomas, is the face of cash transfers in Guyana. He's the founder. Dr. Clive Thomas and the WPA is the founder of the cash transfer. Okay, when it comes to the $200,000, Dr. Hines, per household, I did not agree, and I said it on my program on Saturday. Why I did not agree, number one, like you would have said earlier, we have not seen that a study was done. That was number one. And let me just piggyback a little bit and say kudos again to Dr. Clive Thomas for coming up with these numbers, because we have to remember, when he did this study, we did not start, the extraction of oil had not started yet. So he basically had to kind of use estimated numbers here. And to come up with such a figure, it's a very, very good figure. It's a workable figure. Whether you look at it from the perspective of head of household or individual, it's a very good starting point. So I want to make that clear. We could have done further studies to see where we stand now, but that was not done. Okay, given that that was not done, okay, I still disagreed, because what I would have said on Saturday, what incentive are you giving to our young people who are doing what is right by going out there and working? What incentive are you giving them when you come and you're going to give to the head of household $200,000 and there is nothing there for the young people? Okay, I said on the program that you could have given young people either $75,000 or $100,000. If you can do $200,000 to the head of household, I am sure that you can do $75,000 to $100,000 for the young people. And that's why I applaud former Finance Minister Winston Jordan and what he would have brought out here after the fact, saying that, okay, if we're going to go down that road, it is better if every Guyanese adult, 18 years or older, receive the $100,000 on cash grant. But then, Dr. Hines, I kind of think of it that, this government is so cheap, man. Okay? We don't know the exact date that the distributions is going to start. So we can push it out a little more for those individuals who are going to turn 18 right on the cusp of that distribution, and let them also benefit. What is the problem? What is Barry Jagdeo's problem? Barry Jagdeo and the PPPC's problems with Guyanese receiving from this oil patrimony? They seem to have a problem, Dr. Hines.
Yeah, I mean, that they haven't thought the thing through, no doubt. I mean, if you had said if you turn 18 any time during the year of 2025, that would have been reasonable. It covers everybody, whether you turn 18 in January or you turn 18 on the 31st of December. That would have been reasonable. You see, when you give it to the individuals, you take, they have some families in Guyana with 4 adults, 4 big people: mother, father, grandmother, uncle, and then you get adult children. So you could have in a household about 6 individuals, 7 individuals who are adults. Now, if you gave the household, they would have just gotten $200,000. Now you give $100,000 per individual with 7 big people in the house, they get $700,000. So the $100,000 work well for that kind of family. But like I said, if you have a young mother who is 25 years old with your 4 children, single mother household, she would have gotten $200,000, but now she's only going to get $100,000. The thing is that you can't satisfy everybody with either of the 2 models, all right? And that is why I agree with you that the government needed to study this thing, think it through, and then flex, because clearly, I know plenty house that get 8, 9 big people. Sometimes we would joke and say, well, everybody is to fit in that place. I remember when my little nephew, born in America, we took him home for the first time in the little house that we grew up in. And that little boy, he looked around. He said, Uncle David, how you, Uncle George, Uncle Brian, Uncle Richard, Auntie Denise, my mom, Auntie, all of you all fitted in this house. We were all adults in that house, right? And so I know that I got some house with 5, 6, 7, 8 big people inside. And the $100,000 that works for them. It works for them. The household thing would not have worked for them, all right? And by the same token, like I said, if you're a young mother or a young father, 20-something year old raising your children, all you're going to get now is 100,000, whereas you would get a 200,000. So the thing was not well thought out. And as you said, they got the money. So why not say, if you turn 18, anytime in 2025, bingo, you get the $100,000. We have a government that is cavalier. We have a government that is floundering. We have a government that is snatching to anything because its objective is to remain in power, not to empower the Guyanese people, not to bring real relief to them. Your thoughts?
Well, Dr. Hines, I cannot disagree with you because look, when we're giving out these cash grants, right? If the PPPC was a smart government, they understand that it has been there is a deficiency when it comes to housing in Guyana. Right? What you would do as the housing authorities to make sure that you clear away lands and have lots and these things available, because you're giving out a cash grant. And like you said, if you have 5 or 6 adults in a home, and let's say that those individuals are renting, Dr. Hines, there goes the disposable income to put down on a piece of land. Okay? But it is so difficult, Dr. Hines, for the normal born and bred Guyanese to make any headway in Guyana without having large sums of capital to push the agenda. So yes, you are correct. Guyanese born and bred is at a major disadvantage under the PPPC government because there was no plans, there is no vision for such a people. There is no vision for the poor, Dr. Hines. As far as the PPPC is concerned, the poor will remain poor. Also, when I look at this $200,000 cash grant, what I see is an election pitch. Okay? That's what and Dr. Hines, the PPPC is so predictable because from the time they would have assumed the power, I called this. I said that, listen, nothing is going to be done for Guyanese until the cycle is just about over and there is time for election. Then the PPPC will come back again. Now, Dr. Hines, this is going to be a major test of the Guyanese population and what they would have learned over the period of time that the PPPC would have assumed office to now. Come 2025, the picture will be completely painted based on where the people vote. Because, Dr. Hines, one of the things that we also need to make clear to the people, that $200,000 or $100,000 per an adult is not nearly enough. Okay? The numbers need to be put out there on the table, and proper studies need to be done. If you're making 7.9 million US a day, it doesn't equate, right? In one cycle, one election cycle, that Guyanese are receiving $100,000 per an adult, and keeping in mind that you still have adults in Guyana with that pink slip from the COVID cash grant. We need to keep these things in mind, Dr. Hines, because these are major blunders by the PPPC as a government. Major blunders.
Yeah, but thank God for people like Clive Thomas and Winston Jordan and others on our side. And I say to our people, these whether it's $100,000 per individual or $200,000 per household, the fact of the matter is that the ideas, the methodology, they came from our side. That is, they are using our ideas. And we, out of government, when you're out of government, you can't give people anything because you don't control the purse strings. But you can pressure the government to give people, and clearly we have done that. Clearly this government has bowed to pressure twice in 1 week. Right? It is bowed to the pressure of the cash grants period. And then it is bowed to the pressure of this looking stupid because it announced a methodology that it never thought through seriously, and now it has to change its mind. No one can say a good government is a government that recognizes mistake and changes its mind. And so on a normal day, in normal circumstances, you will say kudos for the government to recognize that they made a mistake with the household thing, that it wasn't well thought through, and it's the better option, at least for now, is the individual thing. But they're not driven by that. They are driven by the fact that they want people to think. They didn't give Clive Thomas any recognition. They didn't give Winston Jordan. Winston is usually on this program. I haven't seen him yet for the afternoon. They haven't given Winston. I saw in a chat in which he said they got free advice. They didn't have to pay the consultants big $1 million as they would do. They got free advice. The fact of the matter is that they are implementing ideas that come from our side. And the fact that some of our people, and I want you to address this, Wayne, some of our people, especially our young people, had no idea that the cash transfer was an opposition initiative. A lot of our young people apparently are praising Irfaan Ali for coming up with this idea. And what it shows to me is a couple of things. One, it shows that the cash transfer is very popular. And ideas like the cash transfer are very popular. And that we on the opposition side may have missed the beat by not embracing it as the total opposition and run with it every day, every day, every day, every day, every day, every day. Because we didn't do that, we left the door open for the PPP to come in, use it, and pretend that it's their ideas. And now we vex with the own supporters, young people, and say they should know better. Well, if we don't speak to them, if we don't go to them and boldly said, look, this idea is Clive Thomas' idea, but we have adopted it as the opposition. And we are running with this, and we want you all to know it. So the PPP, when the PPP use it, our people would have already known that it's not their idea. But we kind of dance around the idea, because it's not AFC idea. Only the other day they start talking about it, and the PNC, was all me, loose me with it, and so on. If all of us and embrace that idea, then we would not have had to deal with this deficit that we're seeing there on the ground, where some of our young supporters are believing that this is Irfaan Ali thing. It points, Wayne, what do you think, to the lack of foresight on the part of the opposition in recognizing that when you're out of power, you have to be more aggressive than when you are in power, because all you have when you're out of power is ideas and promises to make to the populace. You don't have anything tangible to give them. Your thoughts on that?
Dr. Hines, when you look at the opposition from a holistic perspective, number one, we have to stop playing this ego politics. Okay? This was an excellent, a great initiative by Dr. Clive Thomas. We should have embraced it as an entire opposition and should have taken it to the forefront. But in this life, in this world, you live and you learn. So I hope that this is a good example, okay, for the opposition as a whole going forward. When these ideas come to the table, you have to take them and copyright them. You have to take them and copyright them. The other thing, Dr. Hines, parents that are watching your program, watches Mark's program, Sherrod, my program, all the programs out there, you need to encourage your children to join these programs. so that they can learn a little bit about our history. Because listen, Dr. Hines, this is a lack of history right here. And when I always say that the MPs have things to do, yes, there's always something to do. You need to get out there, you need to get on the ground, you need to empower the youths, okay? And you need to teach them about the initiatives of the opposition. These are your future voters. The earlier you teach them and get them on board, it's going to be better for you, your party, your values, your vision, and everything for Guyana. So when I look at our young people being lost and not understanding that this was an initiative by the WPA and Dr. Clive Thomas, I am not surprised. Because yes, I was looking through a couple articles and looking through the news, and I would have seen that a lot of the big broadcasters, a lot of the networks, they don't pay too much of attention to the WPA. But I would like to say this. When I look at the party called the WPA, I see a group of intellectuals. It may be a small party, Dr. Hines, but it's a party that reminds me of a tugboat. You know, the tugboat is that little strong boat that moves all the large vessels. I feel as if the WPA is a party that moves mountains. And again, credit to Dr. Clive Thomas and this initiative.
Yes, and I do agree with you that I think that we have to make a shift. The media has been very cruel to small parties. They don't give coverage to a WPA, for example. Many times we send press releases, they don't carry them, you know, or they may carry them as letters and thing. And I don't quarrel with media because media have their favorites. And clearly, you know, there is a bias. They don't think small parties are useful. And I think they're doing the country a disservice because when developments like these happen, and now you have to give credit to a quote unquote small party, you really can't do it because you never did it all along. And clearly we have to change the political culture and to begin to let people understand that there are parties that, because of their long history, because of their machine, they can potentially bring 100,000, 200,000 people to the ballot boxes. And then there are other parties and groups who may not be able to use their name to bring people to the ballot boxes, but they can use their ideas to reinforce those who are likely to go to the poll and to bring those who may have opted out of the system and decide, look, I ain't voting. But when you hear an idea like the cash transfer, you decide, this cash transfer comes from a certain quarter. Look, I'm going to vote now because this is something about me. And so we have to change. And I don't expect big parties to tomorrow start recognizing small parties. That's not how human beings operate. But institutions like the media have to know better and to give coverage to all political parties and all groups, regardless of whether they're quote unquote small party or large party. So I think, but I feel that as we go forward, we are hopefully going to get better at that. Let's pivot a little bit from the cash transfer and go to the free education at the university. It's an old idea, one that was implemented by the Fox-Burnham government way back in the 1970s. If you're my generation, you would have benefited from it. I went to the University of Guyana 2 years for free in the 1980s, and so I benefited from from free education. I was able to transfer those credits to the United States when I migrated. And so therefore, a whole generation of us benefited from free education. The PPP came in and they scuttled it. Partly for objective reasons, because it was clear that as a country we couldn't afford the big bill, but mostly out of bad mind, because they wanted to damage everything that Burnham initiated. They wanted to throw it down the tube, and so they got rid of it. And now, 30 years later, they have reinstated it. And again, no credit to the PNC, no credit to Burnham. They make it look as though it's a new idea by the PPP. If you are 30-something years old, 40-something years old, and you're not actively politically involved and paying attention to what's happening politically, you may not know that that idea was an idea by Forbes Burnham. And so the PPP comes in now, and they reinstate this this initiative, and in a sense claiming it as their own. Be that as it may, it's now back to free education at the University of Guyana. How, in your estimation, how effective or how good that is for poor people?
Dr. Hines, it will do an excellent thing for poor people. It's an excellent thing for poor people, but let me just go back to when the PPPC would have stopped free education at the University of Guyana. And you spoke of this earlier. The PPPC does not like to do studies. That's number one. Number two, they're not democratic. They're not bipartisan. You know, they don't listen to anything that the other side has to say. That's why we have some of these decisions that are indeed so cavalier. But nevertheless, what could have been done initially, Dr. Hines, is that you could have determined who would have gotten a free university education based on household income. That means for the individuals in the poor household, those were the people that you would have had to cater for, you know, when it comes to university for free. Or, you know, you would have set thresholds that we would pay for university, providing your child or this student attain a grade of B and above in all courses taken. These are all criteria that could have been laid down. And Dr. Hines, you are a professor at a university, so you know where I'm going with this. Okay. Now, the students that have parents that are making quite a bit of money, those are the ones that would have had to pay, should have been paying the tuition. That could have been done. I'm going to push forward to now. What has happened now with the institution of free education at the university level starting in January? That's just the PPP going to be out of being in violation of our constitution, because when I look at it, for all those years, the PPP were in violation of our constitution, because our constitution says free education from nursery to university. Now, everybody likes to sit down and talk bad about Burnham. How was he able to execute in that time? And the PPPC was unable to execute on behalf of the Guyanese people, taking away a free university from them. And there are people out there who thinks that Jagdeo is great. How is that? Now, Dr. Hines, again, the PPPC is late. Free university should have commenced since they would have taken power. 6 months to a year later. Why now? Again, I'm going to point this out. Another elections pitch. Okay? As an opposition, we have to get out there and we have to teach the young people. Okay? That the absence of university for all these years was a total violation of our constitution. While I am excited, Dr. Hines, I still think of those individuals who would have went to university but just could not afford it. And to them, I say, it's better late than never. Go to university and attain your dreams. And I hope that the PPPC has put mechanisms in place to accept these individuals into university when they apply, and not tell them, oh, you didn't just finish your CXC, so you may be rusty and all these type of things. They must be allowed. It is their right. The PPP would have infringed on that for 20-something plus years. So yes.
Yes, you're quite right. And of course, even now, where tuition is free, I mean, it's one university and there are so many seats at the university. And so clearly it is those students with a 20 subject and 15 subject who are likely to get into the university first than the poorer children who may have 5 subject or 7 subject or 8 subject. And I was on this morning on the Guyanese Morning Time, and I was making the point that we have to, certainly my party, if we have anything to do with the education system, will make it easier for poor families, especially first-generation university students, poor families whose nobody has ever gone to university from that family, to make it easier. So there has to be some form of a formative action in getting into university, because yes, it's free, but UG can only take in so many students. And like I said, it is those students with plenty subject who are going to get in first. And those from the poorer families with the 8 subject and the 7 subject and so on are not likely to go in. So there has to be some form of affirmative action, certainly from our standpoint in the WPA, to ensure that there are seats that are set aside for poor families, low income, going back to your thought there, low income families, families who was never, which have never had people gone to university, that there should be some affirmative action. Your thoughts?
Dr. Hines, that is great right there. Because what you just did, you just set criteria. You're saying that a certain amount of a certain percentage, okay, of poor individuals, a certain percentage of individuals who is like the first generation, the first individual to ever attend college from that family, you're saying that those seats should be allocated and ready for those individuals to the extent that we have enough people to fill those seats. Well, if you don't have enough people, that's a different thing. You're going to fill it with others.
Yes.
Right? But you're saying that these criteria should be set. I totally agree that that's the way we should go if we want to strike a balance, because Dr. Hines, balance is so important. It is very, very important. And we have seen a lot of imbalances when we look at issues across Guyana. So yes, this is a very, very, very good approach and would do us well. Also, Dr. Hines, I would like to add that, the government should invest a little bit more into the Critchlow Labor College, the Guyana Teachers Training College, and also should build out a new university and do some upgrades also at the University of Guyana. I mean, some expansion, because now that university education is free, Dr. Hines, it's obvious that you're going to have more students to deal with. All right?
Go ahead.
Right. Yes. And I would say that, expansion is needed if we are to keep up, with the world. because we are now playing from behind, because we would have failed to educate our people, those that wanted to be educated. We would have failed to, well, not totally educate them, but to give them a university education over those 20-something, 30 years, whatever it has been. You know, that education at the university level was not free. So we have a lot of recovering to do.
We have a lot of recovering to do. And your point is well taken, because, you know, university, let's face it, is an elitist institution, because only 5% of the world population, 5 to 10% of the world population are in universities right now across the world. So these are elitist and institution. This is an elitist institution, and you have to make it accessible for the ordinary people. In Arizona, where I live and work part of the time, the Constitution says that the state has the responsibility of ensuring that each citizen is afforded a university education. That's in the Constitution. Just as you pointed out that in our Constitution, it says that university education should be free and fair. And people sometimes don't pay attention to those fine prints. But your point about the feeder institutions into the university, the Critical Labor College, the Teachers Training College, very important. And I would add to that the trade schools, the GITC, and those, because not all of our people are into the sociology and the law and the chemistry and the biology and so on and so forth. And we have to have these institutions like the trade college, the trade schools like the GITC and the GTC, and maybe getting the acronyms mixed up here. But it's very important. And sometimes when students go to those trade schools, they discover their appetite for a more academic type of education, and then will want to go on. So your point is well taken. It's not just the University of Guyana, but the feeder institutions. There are so many people who would not have gone to university had it not been for Critical Labor College, right? You live in the United States and you know that the community colleges are very important. Often, poor people, children are able to go to those community colleges, do the first 2 years there, and then go over to the 4-year college. And I tell you something, Wayne, when you come to the graduation, what we find at the university is that the students who come in from the community colleges do as well as those who went straight in to the universities. And in many instances, in fact, there's a study in California that showed the students who came in from the community college actually do better. They graduate with better GPAs than the students who went straight in. So there is a place for these community colleges, like the Critical Labor College, like the trade schools, and it's a major shame that the subvention to Critchlow has been removed. We know that Ipada G started some night schools. Aubrey Northman, he was advisor on youth. He also started night schools, and a lot of these night schools have been closed by the government. We have to give our people a second chance. I don't know if you may not be old enough to remember that there were people who failed common entrance, but they got a chance to go on and do something. We used to have some exam called preliminary examination, and then CP, the College of Preceptors. And people failed at common entrance were able to go on and do the prelim and do the CP. Some of the big people here on the show will remember CP and come in to high school, secondary school at fourth form. And when they came in at fourth form, they did as well as the rest of us who were there from first form. So that system is a well-tested system, both in past Guyana and in places like the United States of America. And we have to have rekindled that system in a place like Guyana to give especially poor people children a second chance at going to high school and going to university. Your thoughts?
Yeah, Dr. Hines, I agree with you on that, because look, from an education perspective, not everyone matures at the same time.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Some people need additional time, to learn, for the brain to actually trigger, So with having community colleges, and we have a lot of those in New York.
Yeah.
Okay. And what it creates a bridge. Like, for example, if you look at like a BMCC have a strong accounting program, and it's a bridge to Baruch and Brooklyn College, right? So that is important, not because you would have, and you've spoken about people failing common entrance, not because you have failed common entrance, it's the end of the world. It's the end of life. No, you got to get up back. You got to keep going. You probably was not matured yet enough and ready for that level of, academics. But once you get back on that horse, Dr. Hines, like I said, these community college and these institutions that, flows up to the larger institutions are the ones that, people get into and get themselves to that point, build themselves up, matriculate themselves to that point that they're ready for the larger university. So when you look at University of Guyana, and this is good that we talk about Critchlow and we talk about, the GTIs and the Guyana Teachers Training College and these things. We have to look at it from the ground up. We don't just look at University of Guyana and nothing else. They are subsidiaries below the University of Guyana, right? That flows up these smart matriculated students that you would have spoken of. We need a system like that in Guyana. But Dr. Hines, what's unfortunate for the Guyanese people at this time is that you have the wrong government in place. Okay, you don't have a government that have that type of a vision for its people. But yet that same government chastises its people by saying, we have to bring in expertise from outside because our people are not trained. You ask yourself the question, whose fault it is? I would lay that squarely at the feet of the government. Over to you, Dr. Hines.
Yes, and Desiree is making a point here that it saves money too. And let me give you my personal story, sisters and brothers, comrades here. Yeah, I my first 2 years at university was at the University of Guyana, free. I then migrated and went to the University of the District of Columbia, UDC. Those of you in the Washington, D.C., Maryland area would know. And in those days, they used to call it the University of Dunn's Children, because Mayor Marion Barry had set up that university for poor people children. And I was able to do my second 2 years there. And I remember paying $345 per semester. $345 per semester. So I make that point to say that my bachelor's degree was cheap. I was then able to do well there and then go over to Howard. And I remember when I went over to Howard, the admission professor there, Professor Woodward, he said to me, nobody from UDC ever made it through to the PhD in this department. I'm challenging you to be the first. And of course, I did my master's there. I had to pay for it, and then I got a scholarship for a PhD, and so became the first UDC student to graduate from the political science department at Howard with a PhD. Nowadays, it's commonplace for UDC students to do. But more than that, UDC today is now white people's school. They used to cuss it. They used to cuss it and say, oh, it's the University of Dunn's children and so on. Now, white people are going there because it's relatively cheap. It's more expensive now to go to UDC than my time, but it's relatively cheap to get a degree at UDC than at Georgetown University or Howard or any one of the big schools, University of Maryland there. So Desiree's point that it is cheap. It is cheap. The community colleges are cheap. Imagine if we were to have a community college in Region 5, a community college in Region 8, Region 9, one in Region 2, you know, how much that would help in terms of preparing our young people. And then they can get their associate degree, and they don't necessarily have to go on to the big university. They can get their associate degree in areas, technical areas, because we're now a petrol state. And we need technical people. We need engineers. We need people with all kinds of technical skill. You know, and an area like economics, for example. I remember running away from economics when I was at UG because we had to do a course called econometrics. Plenty mathematics and so on. I said, not me.
Numbers, yes.
Yeah. Not me. Later on, it came back and I had to do political economy and I had to do some econometrics. So I couldn't run away from it, although I moved over to political science. But I'm saying in this time, I would like to see more of our young people get into things like economics and accounting. All right? Because we are in a petrol state and economics is so important in understanding how economies work and planning and so on. And accounting. We tell people to get into entrepreneurship. You're an accountant. I'm reliably informed. We tell people to get into entrepreneurship. But if you can't count your own money, you're going to end up paying people to count your money for you.
Yes.
You know? So these are areas that we can set up, these community colleges, and privilege things like economics and accounting and engineering and so on, and give young people a chance to get into those areas of study very early, and they don't have to leave because people are now making children young. You know, if you're a young mother, you have your child at 21, you live in Anna Regina, it's hard to leave there and come to Torkine to go to UG. But if there's a community college there in Region 2, you can go to your community college right there and you're taking care of your family while you're there and getting an education. We have to think this thing through, as you quite rightly said. It's about vision. And we have a government that does not have any vision. And this whole cash transfer thing has exposed the government in a serious way. There is no outcome to this cash transfer beyond trying to use it as an election gimmick. They're not saying, look, we are taking a percentage of this money that we are getting from oil. We are stated to get almost $550 billion this year. That's not crumbs for a country like Guyana. And if you take a 10% of that, that's $55 billion. If you take a 10% of that and give it, whether you give it to individuals or you give it to households, and you do that every year you do it. So it's not no one-off thing for the thing. You do that every year. That thing will enhance the financial profile of our people, especially poor people. You see? And the outcome is that what? You are decreasing poverty all the time. And if you decrease poverty in a place like Guyana, I mean, you will be creating a miracle. Because poverty does lead to all kind of story, all kind of thing people just do because they're poor. And if they weren't poor, they won't do it. There are things people that got all their nose and do. You got beg when you're poor. And one thing with poor people, they just beg, but they don't like beg. They just beg, but they don't like beg because they got pride. And so when you remove poverty, you're removing shame. You know, it's not just about people becoming rich, but it's about people's dignity. Because when you are no longer poor, you don't have to beg. You don't have to take shit from people. Woman ain't got to take shit from man. And some man ain't got to take shit from woman. You know what I mean? Then you're not poor. And so the thing is, cash transfer to what end? We are saying it is to end poverty. And when you end poverty, you're not just making people rich in terms of finance, but you're making them rich in terms of their dignity. Because poverty does take away people's dignity. Your thoughts, Mr. Speaker?
Okay, so Dr. Hines, what I get from you is that the opposition have one means to an end, and the PPPC has not a means to an end. So this is a one-off $200,000. Well, it's going to be $100,000 per an adult now, cash grant, right? It's a means to what end? That the people should once again elect the PPPC in 2025. Now, what you're saying, Dr. Hines, is $200,000, or even if it's $100,000 per individual, your means is that this must be continuous until, which makes a whole lot of sense, okay? Because look how Guyanese have been living since 1991-92 when the PPPC would have taken government to know. You can't give them a one-off 100,000 or 200,000 per household, whichever one, and expect that to suffice when it comes to cost of living, when it comes to inflation, when it comes to the fact that Guyanese are looking for disposable income to be able to buy a piece of land to build, right? You can't call a one-off, sufficient. So I would agree with the opposition's vision on this, that the Guyanese people, you allocate, whether it's 10% or whether it's 60 billion, whichever one it is, you allocate that every year until, and I have said this, they should have started this initially, or if they wanted to take a measure and do a study, they should have at least started this the second year that they would have been in power, giving out these monies to the Guyanese people. It would have done wonders, Dr. Hines. We would have already moved forward some. But the Guyanese people are in the same position that they were before oil. And that is a crying shame. That is a crying shame. So I agree with the opposition's vision and their means, okay, to the end. And their end, which is to eradicate poverty, which I would love to see. I would love to see the day that my brothers and sisters in Guyana, all of them, all 6 ethnic groups, is living in prosperity and not just sitting at the feet of the PPPC and they stretch out their finger and they say, I'm going to give you $500 million to show the rest what can happen for them. Dr. Hines, I see a few people would have gotten contracts, and I wanted to elaborate on this. Guyanese, don't get excited, because it's about 800,000 of you right now, 750, 800,000 of you now giving the Venezuelans that's in the country. You still have to count them. And there's no way that all of you can get 500 million. So you still need to pay attention to your politics. The gimmick that the PPPC would have pulled by giving contracts to these young, Afro-Guyanese or Guyanese of African descent individuals doesn't paint any type of picture to the smart, learned individuals but that it is that the PPPC is trying to pull these gimmicks, knowing that elections is coming up in 2025. So, Guyanese, we need to keep our eyes peeled and pay attention to what Dr. Hines, amongst others, have to say. Over to you, Dr. Hines.
Stay woke, as the young people would say. Hamid Ali saying what will happen when the price of oil drop. Well, when the price of oil drop, the cash transfer money drop, because you're taking 10% of what you get. If the price of oil drop and we're bringing in less money, you get a smaller check than you get when we get money. It's as simple as that. And in any case, at some point, because you're trying to eradicate poverty, the more people come out of poverty, the less they would be dependent on that check that is coming from the government. That is the key here. That is why outcome, Hamid, is very, very important. I know you're a PPP man, but let's be reasonable here. I noticed Freddie Kissoon this morning said, well, David Hines hates and Jordan hate, well, he didn't say Jordan, he said David Hines hates the PPP. But he didn't throw out the cash transfer. He said it's baby step, he welcomed it. And he said that that Mr. Jordan also don't like the PPP, but he welcomed the cash transfer. In fact, he said it should be an individual mandate and so on. All right? And I mentioned that to say that we got to be very careful here, that we do not throw away our ideas because the PPP take we ideas and implement it, right? What we have to do is to claim our ideas and to show where they are misapplying our ideas. Now, there is such a thing as political morality, and we have to begin to practice that. And so on a day like today, whether you agree with Winston Jordan or not, he put a proposal on the table. The government has adopted his proposal, which means that the government had no proposal of their own. They first used the household proposed by Thomas and the WPA, and then in a week they said, well, we're not going there anymore. We're going to use the individual thing proposed by Jordan. Whether you agree with household or you agree with individual, both of the methodology come from our side. That is the important thing. And as I said this morning, I want people like Winston Jordan and Clive Thomas and Elson Lowe and all of them to sit down and to take all of the proposals that is coming from the opposition and put it together in a neat package that cover all bases. Clearly, the household option doesn't cover all bases. The individual option doesn't cover all bases. Both of them cover both of them got flaws. So what I want is for our technical economic gurus to sit down and to come up with a strong opposition proposal, because clearly what this PPP is doing is thundering. They're like Balili. When you have heard about Balili?
No.
You gotta ask them big people for it. Balili is like a scavenger. They're from Moses. When old people tell you, you're like a Balili. I mean, you're clean up everywhere you're going and things. You have no idea, no vision of your own. This is what we have for a government. And clearly, what this government has done in a backhand way is to admit that the vision and the ideas are coming from our side. And I want you, our supporters, to embrace that. We can argue about whether the individual or the Our soul is the better thing. That's human beings. We are always going to disagree and so on and so forth. The fact of the matter is that both approaches emanated from us, right? And like I said, Winston Jordan was bold enough to come out and to say, not just said give to individuals, he said give 100,000. And the PPP take the individual mandate and they're taking number 2. These people, they have no shame. There's something else. But we have to understand that the PPP has got their finger on something that perhaps the opposition doesn't have his finger on. The PPP, they're the government, they got resources, they go wrong. They're listening, they're hearing what people are saying, and they're responding. They're doing polls. I know that they're doing weekly polls. They're doing weekly polls. And they obviously would have done a poll after he come out with that thing and would have seen probably that the individual thing is much more popular, especially among younger people, than the thing. And they're going. Wherever the breeze blow, they're gone. Well, that was what has happened, you know? Or people will say, when your head empty, anything can fall inside. And we are shown on our side that we are empty. Yes, my brother, go ahead.
Dr. Hines, to your point, yeah. I believe that both proposals are good. And if you take them and you intertwine them,
yeah,
giving every individual, right, $100,000. But when you can find those individuals that are single parents, that's when the whole head of household come in.
Yes, yes.
Where you can allot that person $200,000 because they have all these little children.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So I agree with you. The experts need to draw the table and get the studying going. Yeah. You know, we're gonna come up with multiple proposals. I can assure you that. Right?
Yeah. And I think the hybrid system, you're right. The hybrid system, if they had done serious study, the hybrid system could have worked. In them big extended family, where you get 5-6 adults in one home, the individual thing should go there. In that family with that young lady, who is 25, 26, 27, 28, 30 years old, she's the head of the household. She got 5 children, and she's the only adult in that household. The individual thing obviously is not such as an incentive to her. You can give her you could have given her the $200,000 as a household. And them big family with 5, 6, 7 adults, the individual thing worked there. We could have, but you couldn't do that if you didn't do a study.
Correct. Well, 2 things, Dr. Hines. You couldn't do it, okay, if you didn't do a study. That's number 1. The other thing is that, hey, if the opposition would have done a study and you're willing to listen, you know, yes, you can get it right. Which they did kind of listen here because they was using Dr. Clive Thomas's proposal first, and now they're using the Honorable Winston Jordan's proposal. So they are listening. They are listening. And that's important. But Dr. Hines, that does not make them democratic. Let me be clear. It does not make the PPPC democratic. They are still undemocratic in nature. If they were democratic, Guyana would have been in a much better place. Let me be clear on that.
That's right. That's right. Well, people say they might listen, but they're not here. They might listen, they're not here. Stick broke in the ears. Look, under the individual formula, so that I am a Guyanese. I have a Guyanese passport. I have a Guyanese driver's license. I have a Guyanese ID. I am entitled to my $100,000. Technically, I really shouldn't get no $100,000. You could have taken that $100,000 that now people like myself entitled to and give it to that young family, single parent family, and top them up. Tap them up. You see? But you needed to do studies. That is the point here. All right. But here, my people, you all get the $100,000. You all take it. Take it because it's your entitlement. That's one. Two, it comes from your leaders. It's your leaders who put it on the table and force the PPP to adopt it lock, stock, and barrel. So you all take it. Don't let me argue among ourselves which one is better. All right? What we have to do, take power next year and do it the right way. Take power and do it the right way. If we're out of power and we can get you all $100,000 per individual, think if we get into power and you all put all our feet to the fire, how much more you all can get. And notice all the feet to the fire, because one of the mistake we made with the coalition when it was in power the last time, we were triumphant and we didn't hold the feet to the fire. I tried to hold the feet to the fire, they fired me 2 times, right? This time come, they can't fire me if more of you all hold the feet to the fire. It's called tough love. You vote for government, do not do like PPP supporters and allow them to commit murder. Vote them in and hold the feet to the fire on your terms. On your terms. If we can get you all $100,000 per person or $200,000 per household now, when we don't have power, the reasoning has to be that when we get power and you all keep in line, you all can get much more. My brother, Wayne Caesar, over to you for your closing thoughts.
Yes, and my closing thoughts, Dr. Hines, is that yes, these payouts are promised. So in the interim, meaning the time between now and the payoff, is the government going to do a blitz of society, okay, to make sure that our citizens, adults, once you're 18, are going to be 18, okay, by the end of next year, like you propose, I agree with that 100%, that these individuals get electronic banking. Because, listen, Dr. Hines, I do not agree with the methods of distribution in Guyana when it comes to cash grants. It's illegal. Okay, it's illegal, it's embarrassing, it is shameful. Why is it that all Guyanese cannot have electronic banking? Why is it that the government cannot reach out to all the financial institutions that are involved in banking and have them open their doors to Guyanese coming and opening accounts, setting a threshold of maybe $1,000? Okay, who can't afford it? Government should pay it, because there are some really, really poor Guyanese that cannot afford it. And we need to start accounting for these people, Dr. Hines. We need to start being more loving and caring to our pensioners. We have to remember these are the people who would have worked in the past to hand over the Guyana that we have today to us. What are we doing to show our respect towards them? I mean, we did not touch on it on this program, but I do believe that the old age pension should be around $80,000 and going up on a yearly basis.
Yeah.
We have to do better.
Yeah.
You know, we have our pensioners dying for no reason. Some of them can't go and get their pressure checked, you know, and all these little different things. You know, diabetes amongst other things. We have to get better, Dr. Hines. I encourage, though, Dr. Hines, all Guyanese to keep their heads up. Better is coming your way. We will not be speaking of the PPPC in government once the next elections would have occurred. And to the coalition, you guys need to act as a coalition. I know Dr. Hines have called on the other, you know, leaders in the coalition to come together. And Dr. Hines, in my opinion, I feel Like if you guys need to be at the table and working on a Cummins-Borough Accord, we're not asking it to be signed right away. We're not asking, but we want to see that the groundwork is being done. Because we don't know, Dr. Hines, if snap elections could be called. We have to be prepared. To fail to prepare is to prepare to fail. Okay? Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Hines, and thank you, audience.
Always a pleasure to have you, Wayne. And like I said, we want as many ideas to come to the fore, as many perspectives to come to the fore, because our people will ultimately benefit. Thank you very much. You can catch Wayne Caesar on Saturday night on Ben Shop Radio 107.1 and on Ben Shop platforms at 7 p.m. every Saturday. I was about to say every Saturday night because that's very Guyanese. 7 p.m. every Saturday night. But I can say it. 7 p.m.
Yes.
Well, we call it emphasis.
Yes, special emphasis. Yes.
Special emphasis at 7 p.m. every Saturday night. Over to you by Wayne Caesar. Make sure you all tune in to that program on Ben Shop Radio. Thank you, my brother.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hines.
And to you, our audience, it's a good day to be alive. Big up, say, give thanks, as the Rasta man would say. Give thanks to former Minister of Finance, Winston Jordan. They take the idea and they run with it. Don't quarrel whether it's a better or not better or whatever, right? These things, you can't satisfy everybody if you undo a study. But I think Winston offered an easy way out, at least in the short term. And as he said in one of the talk thing that I am in, they get advice for free. Big up to Clive Thomas, big up to Winston Jordan, and we are going to keep on keeping on because we are on a mission until tomorrow night, same time, same place, where we will be doing it again. The Lion of Judah shall break every chain and give us the victory again and again and again.